Well, here we are in Blackwood. Welcome everyone. I thought I would make a build video because I've got a bit of an interesting journey I had in this patch. We had such an awesome patch in Flames of Ambition with the no procs, and when I came into Blackwood, I was at first like really disappointed. The damage just seemed too high. And whenever as you know, I play a Gank Nightblade, and if there's a little bit of lag and you get caught out, you could just get killed in like one or two shots. So it was pretty frustrating, especially when I'm from New Zealand and I already have like, between about 300 ping. So it basically means that you just have a little lag spike and you can get killed so easily. So I was really frustrated with it. So after playing that for a little while, I'm very persistent. So I banged my head against that wall for quite a while. And I got pretty sore. And then I just thought, okay, enough's enough. Clearly I need to change a few things. The thing is, I'm a bit of a damage slut. So I like to hit people really hard. And I didn't want to give up on a lot of damage because it would mean giving up on ganking, which is, I enjoy ganking, but I thought what I thought I did progressively over a week or two was I started to reduce things that were increasing my damage, and I was replacing them with things that were going to give me more resistance, more survivability. So, going for third stage, trying out third stage vampire, using Munderstones that give you resistance or extra health, moving your health up as high as it can go, like moving around your championship points, trying different gear out like fortified brass. So I just tried a number of different things to try to, and I tried different things, and I tried to do it piecemeal. So I started off with higher damage and I just made one change. I can't remember what it was, but let's just say I changed my Munderstone to the lady. And then I was like, okay, still hitting hard, but my survivability is still a bit crappy. So then I'd make one more change. Maybe, try and fortified brass. And then I'd be like, okay, the survivability is definitely getting better. Still finding that my damage, I'm able to gank. And my kind of threshold for when I was going to stop was when I started to notice that my damage was decreasing. I couldn't really get off good ganks anymore. And what I actually found was I just kept on going. I mean, I could go quite a long way into survivability and not lose out on a lot of my damage. And sort of having thought about it, I think it's just because when you're ganking, you're generally going to gank players that are, how do we say it? Average at best, and so they're gonna be squishy almost no matter what gear you're wearing, especially in Blackwood when you're already hitting pretty hard. So you can actually give up quite a bit of damage. If you go all out damage, I think it's the law of diminishing returns and you only gain like maybe an extra 10% in Blackwood. I think you can give up quite a bit of damage and replace it with survivability, and you won't really notice. You'll still be hitting really hard, and you'll still be able to get those ganks off. So this is what this build represents, is all that kind of work, where I kind of found that sweet spot between being able to hit really hard, but also getting really good survivability and tankiness. And I must say, it's gone from I hated this patch to it's probably my favorite patch, because I can still hit really hard. I'm still getting my ganks really easily, but my god, am I hard to kill now. Like, my tankiness has just gone up. And of course, you're a Nightblade, so, it's just with the cloak and the teleport and then the extra tankiness and then the damage you're doing, it's like a really fun class to play right now. So I just also thought I'd add that I think one of the good things about this build is it's a really good ganking build, but it's also really good at 1vxing. So in the gameplay footage, I'm trying to show you the combination of both, of how it's a really good ganker, but also how it's also able to survive and do really good in 1vx's. So it's definitely a step up from the last build, I feel. Now, to start off with, the first DPS set is really anything you want it to be. I know that's kind of dumb, but I've chosen Spriggans. Now, I know there's other sets out there that are really good, like stuns would give me more penetration, and I've tried stuns, and I don't know if it's just because of the lag that I have in the ping, but often when I get the stuns to proc, it's really hard to kind of follow up with those attacks sometimes. And I think it's just because of the lag. I prefer to have a set that just gives me outright increased damage all the time. I don't want to have a set that kind of gives it to me some of the time, because I just want to hit hard on that first attack, because I'm ganking, so that first attack needs to land really, really hard. And then combined with like the lag in Cyrodiil and my ping, if you're kind of relying on a proc and then following up, sometimes you're not going to be able to follow up. So yeah, I just way prefer sets that's just constant. It's always there, it's reliable. So that's why I've gone for Spriggans. You could go for New Moons. If you're going to go for New Moons, definitely make sure that you only front bar it, because it gives you a 5% increase to your costs, ability costs, which would be quite expensive. Because this build is good on stamina, but I probably wouldn't want to push it any further. So, but you could definitely try New Moons. I mean, this is honestly, just pick a DPS slot set that makes sense for you. If you like Alchemist, use Alchemist. Personally, I don't like Alchemist because, again, you're only getting that buff for like when you need it. And I prefer to use my potions defensively when I need them, not offensively. So there's a number of sets you could use here. I'm using Spriggans. Use what you want. So I'm using poisons. The other thing is you could use a poison enchant, or you could use the disease enchant. Both would be pretty good. And I'm using sharpened for the penetration. And so, yeah, basically you want to use 5 Spriggans front barring that. For the second set, and this set is the important set, is Ancient Dragon Guard's Ancient Dragon Guard. Ancient Dragon Guard is a really, really good set, and it gives us kind of what we want to hit that sweet spot of tankiness, survivability, and also pumping out a lot of damage. So it adds nearly 300 weapon damage. I'm pretty sure if this was gold it would. Adds 300 weapon damage. So a good chunk of weapon damage when your health's above 50%. And to be honest, if my health was below 50%, I'd probably not be hitting too many people. I'd be trying to get it back up. So that works really well for ganking. It's always on when you need it. And then when you fall under 50%, then it increases your physical and spell resistance by quite a lot. So that's helping you be that there's a set that's helping me get just that little bit of extra tankiness that I need, whilst also giving me some decent damage. I also like the traits on it. You've got health, which is really, really important this patch, which I'll get to. You want to have about 30k health if you can. So I like the fact that it gives me health, gives you a bit of weapon damage in the tracks, and it also gives critical, which I think for a Nightblade is really, really good, because we do a lot of damage when we hit with our critical attack. So having one slot where it gives you a bit of critical chance, I really, really, really like that. So that's the second set. You want a bow, and you want to backbar anything that's going to give you that little bit of extra armor. So I've done the Bow of Deathspin. Obviously, like you can see, I'm not exactly the best at keeping my gear high. Like I've got purple items and blue items. So you can see that I've been testing, because I've been changing in and out gear, which is why I haven't sort of golded in anything. But yeah, you want to have the back bar, you want to have the bow, you want it to be defending to give you more physical and spell resistance, and then just to get that little bit of extra armor again. Now, you could use the Master's Bow here too if you wanted a bit more damage, which would definitely be a good choice. Again, I just don't find that I'm lacking in damage, so as long as I'm not lacking in damage, I'd rather put it all into survivability, because it just makes you just have so much more fun, because you can run around, not be killed, gank people all the time. It's good. So I would suggest, and this is easier to get than going off and getting a master's bow. So I just put it into Bow of Death's Wind, defending, more armor. And then what I'm using for the monster set is, well, I'm not using a monster set because I'm using a mythic item, which I'll discuss shortly. But again, I'm using the Mighty Mighty Chudans. Again, giving me a little bit more armor. So that just really helps. Again, with the survivability, I've tried using one piece of Ballogs to give me the extra weapon damage. Again, didn't really notice the difference so much. I'm still being able to pull off my ganks nicely, but that little bit of extra armor does help. So I've gone for Mighty Chudans. Now, for the mythic item, this is a no-brainer. Gaze of Sithis. It's awesome. It's a little bit, I mean, I've had to give up Ballogs for this. So I'm going to just show you this, and then I'll give you a suggestion. If you don't have the Gaze of Sithis, there's something else you can do, which you'll still hit hard, and you'll still have good survivability. But I've used, yeah, I got the Gaze of Sithis because literally for one item, you're getting 4,000 armor, health recovery, who cares, doesn't matter anywhere in this patch, and an extra 3,200 health. So it reduces your block mitigation to 0, but as a Nightblade, the only time I'm really blocking is for things like Meteor, and because I've increased my armor through using Gaze of Sithis and other things, Meteors don't hit super hard anyway. Like, they hit hard, but I can recover when I get hit by them by using Teleport and just healing myself on line of sight for a bit. So I think Gaze of Sithis is really awesome. If you can't get the Gaze of Sithis, I think you can. What I would do is I would run Ballogs as your monster set. So Ballogs, because the buff from that is also really epic, and it's basically like a full set, and that's almost enough to carry your damage. So I would use Ballogs as your monster set, and then I would still run Ancient Dragon Guard as your set that gives you weapon damage above 50%, and then it gives you physical resistance when you're under 50%, and then I would run Fortified Brass. Because you're in all medium, you're running Ballogs, and you're a Nightblade. So you still hit really hard. You're still going to be able to pull off those ganks, but the amount of survivability you're going to get from that is really good. So that's what I suggest. Okay, now for attributes and glyphs, what I would suggest is the main thing is that your health sits at about 30k. So the main thing is to get your health to 30k, and then your stamina will, you can see my stamina is like just above 26k, which is fine. So I find it fine anyway. So, but yeah, basically aim for your health to be up 30k. It really matters. And because, well, I'll get into it shortly, but we're running Vampire, which gives you extra resistance when you're under 50% health. And then we're running the Ancient Dragon Guard, which also gives you extra resistance when you're under 50% health. So if someone hits you at 31k, you don't get those resistances. So if you had, say, 20k health, and someone hits you for 20k, like, they're going to hit you for full damage, which basically means you're just going to die straight away. Whereas if you have 30k and they hit you for 20k, it means that those second attacks will then have those resistances added, right? So that's kind of like why you've got to be a little bit careful, I think, with sets like Pariah, because if you have low health, people can still wipe you out because those effects don't kick in until you're lower health. And so by having a bigger health pool, it increases the amount of time or the amount of health that you have those resistances applied, so it makes you harder to kill. I hope that kind of makes sense. So really you just want to adjust your glyphs and your attributes so that you've got about 30k health and then put the rest into stamina. So I would suggest try glyphs on the armor, and if you can't afford that, just go for stamina, and then adjust your attributes so that you've got 30k health, and then putting the rest into stamina. The reason I like the triglyphs is because as a Nightblade we do use cloak and teleport, so having a little bit of extra magicka is quite helpful. But I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, so you could just put into stamina if you can't afford it. For jewellery, I am running all weapon damage. So I'm running 2 infused and 1 swift. And, okay, so again, in terms of that survivability, I'm a wood elf, so I get an extra 5% movement speed by just being a wood elf. And then I've put 1 into swift because that means I'm moving 10% or 11% faster. And I actually find you won't appreciate how much mobility stops people from hitting you. So it's not just a matter of that you're getting around faster, it means that a lot of people that are chasing after you can no longer hit you. So I find that swift is a big damage reduction. It's like a damage reduction glyph because people just find it so hard to actually hit you when they're trying to. It just helps in so many ways. So I would really recommend going either 2 infused with weapon damage and a swift with weapon damage, or even you could go 2 swift and 1 infused. Yeah, it's really up to how much you like that extra speed. Now, if you're not going to run Wood Elf, well, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess you'd have to run... I don't know if it would be that valuable running 1 swift. So if you're going to run something like Khajiit, I guess you'd want to go 2 swift. Yep, so that would be the glyphs on the jewellery. And then on the front weapon, I've already gone over it. Either use poisons or run a poisoned or diseased weapon glyph. And then on the back weapon, I am running the increase in weapon damage. So you can just poke them with a bow attack. And then you get that extra 320 weapon damage. And then you can go in for the kill. I should add, for the armor, I would be running all medium. And I think on this set, because I'm running Mighty Shudan and Gaze of Sithis, I'm running 2 heavy, actually, and 5 medium. And then you want to have a mix of impenetrable and well-fitted. Critical damage still hits really hard, so you definitely want to make sure that your critical resistance is above 2,000. So you can see on here, my critical resistance is 2,352. If you start going lower than that, you'll really start getting ganked and killed really easily. So you definitely want to make sure that your critical resistance is above 2,000. So you want to use, and I'll go into it in the championship tree. So what I would do is I would put enough impenetrable on your gear to get you above, and maybe a little bit above 2,000, like not just dead on 2,000, and then put a little bit into well fitted, because that helps you with dodging, which helps with your sustain, and it just helps you dodge that little bit of extra, and so you don't use up all your stamina when you're doing it, which also really, really help. Okay, and then the other thing is I am a vampire, so as you can probably see by my beautiful complexion, yep, so I'm running a vampire because it's awesome. We don't have health recovery anymore, and the reason I like vampire is because it gives you some really nice buffs. So I'm always running stage 3 vampire, because at stage 3 vampire you're able to reduce the damage you take. So this is what I'm basically after for this, but it gives you some nice benefits too, especially as a Nightblade. So you ignore the movement speed penalty of sneak, which for a Nightblade is awesome. It means that you can be moving around the battlefield, and also your ability to get back into stealth is just epic on a vampire. Like, it's just no time at all. So that's, I find that really, really helpful. Again, this is also a really good ability because it means that whenever you're in invisibility, which is cloak, your spell and weapon damage is increased by 300. So that helps increase your damage when you're coming out of cloak and ganking someone. So again, the vampire's offering you that extra damage, but it's also offering you the extra survivability because it reduces the damage taken to you by up to 30% based on your missing health. So this is what I've mentioned earlier. So again, I really, really like those things like Ancient Dragon Guard Vampire, where they're giving you extra damage and they're giving you survivability. And you really, really, really do notice it. So I think go Vampire. It just, for a Nightblade, there's too many advantages to using it. So the downside of going Vampire is that it is quite expensive. If you look at the character, you'll see that regular ability costs are increased by plus 8%, which is why I'm a little bit not sure about using New Moons, because that gives you another 5%. So then it would mean that your regular ability costs are 13%. So, and as I said, I think my my recovery is pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with it. But I wouldn't want to push it any further. So I've gone Vampire to counteract the fact that those skills are costing so much. The food that I'm using is the smoked bear haunch, which gives you more maximum health, so 3,675 maximum health, but it also gives you good stamina and magical recovery of 315. So that really helps offset the skill costs of being vamp when you're not using the vampire abilities. So I think that's a really important food to have. And then the other thing I'm using to offset that is the serpent, increasing your stamina recovery by 338. So I think these are all things that will help offset the fact that you're using Vampire. But Vampire is just so good, it gives you that increased damage and it also increases your survivability. So those are the things that I would suggest on that front. Also, and on top of the Serpent in the Munderstone, you also want to be using potions that help with recovery too. So the potions I'm using are, where are they? The Triglyph potions. So again, this is really going to help with your recovery as well. So all these things are going to help you basically sustain, which is why this build is so good, not just for ganking, but in 1vx you've got really good sustain, you've got really good survivability, and you've got really good damage. Triglyph potions are pretty expensive, but I don't really see any way, because as a Nightblade you're going to be using cloak and teleport lots, so you actually do need a bit of magicka to be able to get yourself out of trouble. I mean, I'm tanky as a Nightblade, but I'm tanky because I'm using cloak and teleport, so it means that if someone hits me, I can get out of trouble quite easily because they're not going to kill me. But it's not like I'm face tanking them. I still need to be able to utilize the Nightblade kite ability in conjunction with the extra survivability I have that makes me really hard to kill. If I tried to just stand there and fight them like a DK or something, I wouldn't last long at all. So yeah, Triglyphs, I would use them. And then finally, in terms of race, to me, I just don't think, for me, like, it's a no-brainer, Wood Elf. Like, this build is all about, you know, how can I increase my survivability, how can I increase my damage, how can I increase my recovery, right? Those are like the three pillars that make you really survivable, able to do 1vx's, and also your ability to gank. And I feel like the Wood Elf offers all of those things. So it increases your movement speed by 5%. And again, with that swift glyph, that's up to about 11%. And an increase in movement speed absolutely reduces the damage that you take. It just does. People just find it harder to hit you. You pull away from them really quickly. So it's like a damage reduction. And then, of course, you've got the physical and spell penetration of 950, so that's helping increase your damage. You've got an increase in stamina recovery of 258, so that's really, really helpful, especially on a Nightblade, where stamina is like super important for dodging and stuff. So it really, really helps with your sustain, having that extra stamina recovery. And then again, you've got more damage because it gives you 2,000 extra stamina, so you've got an increase again in your resource sustain, but also the damage that you do. And then you've got disease and poison resistance, which again, in this patch, a lot of people are using disease and poison, so that helps with your survivability. So, and not to mention, the most best one of all, it reduces your full damage by 10%. Now, I know that you have that in the champion tree now, that it reduces damage, but still, it means you're even better than anyone else at taking full damage as a Wood Elf. Now, I know that people are really big on Khajiits, and I have switched to Khajiit, so you know you'll probably do more damage. But to be honest, this build isn't really centered around critical damage, so I can't really see how the Khajiit would make too much more of a difference. And you would suffer so much from the lack of sustain. So, and yeah, and you wouldn't have that movement speed. So yeah, I really don't think Khajiit would work too well. And then you could try. I tried Imperial too, and that's obviously has really good sustain, but I just missed the Wood Elf. The Wood Elf just has everything. Like for this build and for the Nightblade, the Wood Elf just fills those holes really well. More movement speed, more recovery, more damage. I love it. Okay, skills. Front bar, relentless focus. Basically using this because it helps you get Assassin's Scourge, and then so you basically want to do 5 light or heavy attacks, and then you get Assassin's Scourge, and then that hits like a truck. Basically, hits them really hard. Now it is cast from a distance, and people can dodge it. So when you do get that, proc, you kind of want to go in and time it with, like, say, an in-cap strike, or get them into stun first so that make sure it lands, because it will basically single shot some people. And it also increases, this skill also increases with every light attack your critical damage, which is super helpful, because our crit, I think we crit about 40% of the time, so that's quite a helpful thing to have. And the good thing about being more tanky now, like in the previous build from last patch, I was kind of a lot more gank focused. So I never really stayed in a fight long enough to be able to often get this to proc. Whereas now, because I'm a lot more tanky and I can stay in a fight for a lot longer, it's quite good. I often get this proc in a lot more, so it's become a lot more beneficial to the build. So you want to use Camouflaged Hunter. This is basically, again, it's going to increase your weapon critical rating by 2,629, so that's super helpful, because, yeah, it's just increasing your crit chance, which is super helpful. And as I said, my crit chance, I think, sits around 40%. Rally, this is your heal, as well as increasing your weapon damage by 20%, so you want to constantly be buffing this. Now, just word of advice, when you go into a fight, make sure you put this up before. I know that's kind of obvious, but I just thought some people might not know that. You want to put this up before, so that then if things do turn nasty for you, you've got this nice big heal waiting to be cast. Because what this does is this heal gets bigger and bigger for every second that you haven't used it. So you want to pop the rally, go into the fight, and then if things go bad, you've got a nice big heal waiting for you to get yourself out of trouble. Surprise attack, okay, bread and butter, Nightblade, main attack, so that's basically what I'm doing. Surprise attack, really good because it can stun them. And I am using ambush as a gap closer. If I was completely playing on my own, you might be able to switch this out for like an execute or something, but I just find it really helpful to close the gap. And especially when I'm playing with my duo partner, playing Pharaoh, I find it really helpful because if people are on him, means I can get on them quickly to get them off him. And then obviously the main ulti is Incapacitated Strike. This is the other one that hits like a truck. It's your bread and butter for ganking and getting kills, and it comes up really quickly. So Incapacitated Strike. Now there's a bit of a sometimes it can be quite hard to land it because there's a bit of a delay and people will often dodge. So if you wanted to replace this with Dawnbreaker, you probably could do that, but I prefer Incapacitating Strike. Okay, on your back bar, again, nothing really surprising here. I'm using Resolving Vigor. That's basically your hot or heal over time. Constantly buffing up with this. Now that health recovery is gone, this is the only thing that's going to get you back up to full health, or at least get your health back up. So I'm using Resolving Vigor a lot. Excellent skill, can't really do without it. Now, this is a little bit different. I used to use Race Against Time. Now I'm using Elude. And the reason I'm doing that is was one of the things I brought in to help reduce damage. And actually, it's huge how this helps. Firstly, it reduces damage from area attacks by 20%, and there are just so many attacks that are area attacks. Especially think of like bombers for one, all area attacks. I used to die to bombers quite easily. Now I actually survive more than I die, far more than I die. Just area effects. The beetles from wardens. Just so many attacks, area of attacks, and it's reducing their damage by 20%. So having the skill on really helps reduce damage that I'm taking. So it really increases my survivability. Also, it increases your movement speed, because every time you take damage from an area of effect attack, it gives you Mate's Expedition for 5 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%. I just find that this is up nearly all the time when I'm in combat with people, so I really like it. And yet I don't really notice that I've got no snare immunity, because I'm already moving so fast that basically I just start moving at normal pace really, which leads me to the next skill, Cloak. Again, super important skill for a Nightblade. Really helps you just be elusive and hard to kill. You know, you basically turn invisible, and it makes you get a critical strike when you come out of it. So really, really important for ganking. But in this patch, you shouldn't. This is not your the best survivability skill you have, although it's good. It's good for getting out of trouble once you're away. But to get away, I'm just going to flip over here. You really want to be using the teleport from Shadow Image. So Shadow Image is, you should always be putting this down. If anyone's not using it, I would really not understand why you wouldn't be. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff with teleport. Like, you know, people are sieging a castle, you can put the teleport shade up, jump off, go gank someone, and then when they're chasing after you, just teleport back up to the castle and they can't do anything about it. It's epic. But it's also just like your best, you know, some Templar gets you in their snare, you can just teleport right out of it. And this is one of the reasons why I don't really feel like I need a snare or snare removal or immobilization removal, because you can just teleport out of it. So this is what you're going to use to get yourself out of trouble. Then when you're out of trouble, you use the cloak. You don't use the cloak when you're in trouble, because people just break you right out of it in like a second. So yeah, those two. And then this is probably your flexi spot where you can put in anything, but I almost always have poison injection, because sometimes when I'm ganking someone and they're at that like 1,000, 200,000 health, but yet they're running away from you and you can't reach them, and there's lag and you're hitting them and it's not landing and stuff like that, I just go to my back bar, shoot them with a poison injection. It's harder for them to get away. And you can see when they're under 50% health, it does 100% more damage. So I just find this really helps finishing off those targets that are at low health. And yeah, I'm just using Temple Guard, just for the extra. This is again, survivability just reduces the damage taken by 5%. So again, it's just helping with that little bit of extra survivability. Okay, so lastly, we have the champion tree. I'm not going to go into the green very much. Do what you want. I'm going for increased mount speed. It's just so unimportant. Who cares? Oh, and probably, I guess, take full damage. That's probably the one thing that is helpful. Wherever it is, where is it? Reduces your full damage by 7% per stage, so I would say that's probably a pretty good skill to have, especially if you're a wood elf, because you already get 10%. So basically, you just jump off cliffs and you're usually okay. So, green tree. Alright, blue tree. Now, I would love to have these two here on my Nightblade to increase my damage. And I feel almost like naughty for not having them on my Nightblade. But I had to sacrifice something, because I found that these two, which I'll get into, just give me too much survivability, that they outweigh having these. I mean, again, I'm still hitting hard, I can still get my ganks. I didn't find these helped so much that my damage felt weak or that I was missing anything. So I found that these two were more beneficial. So these two are reduces your damage taken by single target attacks by 2% per stage, so basically 10% damage reduction. And then in here, going for that critical resistance, so that extra 660 critical resistance. When I took this off and my critical resistance was like 1500 or whatever, man, did I feel the difference. I just felt so much more squishy, and I was just getting ganked. So this skill's really, really important. You could probably swap this skill out with one of those two, but you know, a 10% damage reduction is pretty massive. So I feel like those two are really important. They're more beneficial than those two, I think. Even though I would obviously love to have those two. This I've just put in because I've got the champion points. And so then I've put, you know, 50 points into Master at Arms, so it increases your damage done by 10%, and then another 50% in here, which increases your single target attacks, which is all your attacks, by 10%. So you're doing an extra 20% damage. And this is why you can hit so hard on a Nightblade and still go quite tanky, because, yeah, as long as you're wearing medium armor, honestly, you're going to be hitting hard. So it's all about just making sure that you can hit hard and not die. So that's what I would recommend in the blue tree, and just put your points anywhere else. So in the red tree, again, it's probably just, this largely sort of depends on what you like. I wanted a bit of stamina recovery, so I've gone into some stamina recovery. I've put 50 points into a juice, just again because this is like dodging. And because I've already, you know, those skills are a little bit expensive because of the vampire, and I don't want to sort of drain my stamina too much, so I just did something that's going to help with that resource recovery. And I had no idea that I did this, but this is again to help with break free. So this is really helping with resource sustain. I'm actually shocked that I've put that there, because I was pretty sure I'd put it into health or armor. Yeah, well, there you go. So you could either do this, or you could put a bit more into armor. You know what? I would probably get rid of that, to be honest. So I would get rid of that and put that into armor, because that's just going to help more the survivability. Now I've got an extra 1700 armor, which is pretty epic. And then yeah, just a bit more into health, so because you're trying to get that above that 30k health mark. So I find that really helpful. Alright, so to wrap up, I have, you can see that my character, so I've got, I'm going to go to my front bar. If I drink my potion, I have almost 3000 stamina recovery, 2000 health recovery, and 1500 magical recovery. So that's really, really good sustain. If you're running out on that, then yeah, you're not managing your resources very well. You can see that I've got 5000 weapon damage. So I'll just have a look, and then again. So there you go. I've got 5500 weapon damage, or close to. Now, if I'm hitting with the vampire ability from Cloak, that's another 300, and then if I'm hitting them with my back bar with the weapon enchant, that's another 300. So we've got over 6000 weapon damage, so we're still hitting pretty hard. You can see the weapon critical is 37 points, so basically 40%. Let's just round it up and make it sound better. Physical penetration, almost 15,000, so you're going to be chewing through people's armor pretty nicely. My understanding is that any higher than that is basically you're getting into the law of diminishing returns. So around 15,000 penetration I think is pretty good. And then if you look at the resistance, so obviously my back bar, but I've almost got 30k resistance. 28,600 spell resistance and physical resistance, plus 2,300 critical resistance. So you can take a pretty good smack in the face and be okay with it. And you've got 30k health pool, so, or in my case 31k on the back bar, so you've got a lot of room for making error. So yeah, it's really, really fun build. It's, so much fun. Like, you're so survivable. It's like you still have to play Nightblade. You're not going to be face tanking anyone, but you are. If you play the Nightblade well, you'll find it is really hard for people to kill you, and yet you can still pull off those ganks really nicely. So I hope you'll enjoy it and have fun out there in Cyril and Blackwood. I'll probably be doing updates too. I'm going to be trying out some of those other sets, and just see if I actually really do prefer Spriggans. So I'll do a little update on that later, depending on what I find.